To mark the occasion of Hult International Business School's 20th anniversary, we're awarding our first ever honorary doctorates to people from the business world who most embody our purpose to make an impact that matters and inspire others to do the same. It's a great privilege to be able to award our very first honorary degree to someone who has inspired me personally so much, Paul Polman. Paul's long and successful business career saw him run Europe for Procter & Gamble, the Americas for Nestlé, and culminated in a decade as CEO of Unilever, one of the world's largest consumer goods companies. During his tenure, not only did Unilever create huge value for shareholders, but also Paul spearheaded the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, pioneering the idea that business can profit through purpose. Under his tenure, Unilever was consistently ranked #1 in the world for sustainability. Paul is a Chevalier of the Légion d'honneur, an honorary Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire, and 3 times Investor Magazine's CEO of the Year. Today, Paul leads the United Nations Global Compact, is an ambassador for Race to Zero, and is an advocate for net positive businesses, which he defines as those that improve well-being for everyone they impact, including future generations and the planet itself. Paul, thank you for joining us today. It's my privilege to award you with Hult International Business School's first honorary doctorate.
Well, thank you, Matt. And first of all, congratulations on the 20 years, which have been enormous, but also an honor to receive your first honorary degree. And I will carry it with pride. I've been impressed with your school's commitments to the sustainable development goals and your plans of net zero, and obviously love your purpose to inspire communities that make an impact, and that impact that matters, obviously, and lead others to do the same. So we're in good company here, and once more, a big honor.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Maybe we could have a little chat about how you see the world and the future and the potential for the future. And let me start by asking you, Paul, a fundamental question. Would you, when you think of the future, would you say that you're an optimist about the future? And if so, why?
Well, the first thing I always say is between an optimist and a pessimist, it's better to choose the optimist, because you both have the same life, but an optimist probably has a little bit of a happier life. But in my book, Net Positive, How Courageous Companies Thrive by Giving More Than They Take, I pose myself the same question, and I call myself a prisoner of hope. There's no question that we're well behind where we need to be on the most burning issues: climate change, inequality, achieving these sustainable development goals. And COVID obviously didn't help either. It made us fall behind even more. So, although we're broadly moving, it is not happening at the speed and scale that is needed. And that's a function of our linear thinking, trying to attack these exponential problems that we have. And what we see is that despite all these actions that you hear and see, we're creating still the problems at a faster pace than we're actually applying solutions. But I think there are some signs of hope, and not least the awareness is going up that we need to change our economic systems, and the demand for change is there. Not just the heat waves or the terrible weather effects all around the world now are a good reminder of what we have to do, but I also think that governments or business or the finance community, consumers or employees are all not only starting to move, but demanding actually a faster pace of action. So, what makes me hopeful is first and foremost that technology has been a key driver for change, to be honest. We always underestimate the speed with which technology comes and the impact that it has. We're past peak fuel demand in this world, and there's a clear transition happening in solar or electric vehicles, which will rise to dominance by 2030. Renewables will hit a price tipping point very close, and energy efficiency continues to double, and that will be a key driver of change. What we've seen even is some tipping points, be it in the sale of gas boilers or solar panels or electric vehicles. I think we're getting there. Unfortunately, we are, although we're spending about 1.7 times more on green energy than on fossil fuel, if we want to stay below the or around the 1.5 degrees warming, which is by all means possible, that number needs to be 9 times more. So that's really where the challenge is. The second thing why I'm moderately hopeful is that we're at the point now that people are starting to realize that the cost of not acting is actually becoming higher than the cost of acting. Deloitte did a recent study and said if we just stay on the current trajectory, what we're doing today, not intervening and ending up at 2.5 degrees warming more or less, the world would incur an incremental cost of $178 trillion. Bending that curve and getting closer to the 1.5 degrees would give us a benefit of $43 trillion. So when the cost of inaction is starting to be higher than the cost of action, smart businesses are starting to move. And we see that these leaders that take the first steps in that move towards a more sustainable, equitable, more inclusive society are also the ones actually that see the economic benefits, not surprisingly. And the third and final reason, if I may say, why I'm optimistic is the use and the work you're doing. Education, goal number 4 in the Sustainable Development Goals is just so important. We know that more educated people and societies are also more peaceful, more democratic, have a more booming middle class, and all that is being challenged today. But if you look at the Gen Zs or the millennials, you do have to conclude that they are more purposeful, that they embrace these challenges as enormous opportunities. And I believe that it's not only that they're demanding a seat at the table, but in many of the cases that I'm involved in, you actually have to give them the table itself. So I think we're at this crust of this crucial moment in history where I think there is more reason for hope than despair. And frankly, hope moves people into action. Fear or any other word you want to apply, frankly, will not get us there. And that would be grossly irresponsible in terms of our obligations towards the planet and future generations.
Thanks, Paul. I would certainly agree that hope inspires people to action much more than fear does. Following on from that, what would you say are the biggest systems changes that we need today?
Well, there are many systems changes that we need to drive, but I think the biggest one, without any doubt, is to move with speed and scale to what I talked about this more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient society that we want, where the basic human values of dignity and respect for everybody, inclusion, compassion are lived all across the world. This is, without any doubt, the growth opportunity of the century. People that embrace it, countries that embrace it, will do very well. And increasingly, we can see that happen already in the private sector, where winners and losers are clearly marked now, or at the country level, where countries that are moving more aggressively are actually finding themselves in a better position. But climate change and inequality, I would really call out as probably the biggest challenges. Now, it's not easy because we need to have a change at a scale well beyond the industrial revolution and at a speed that is well beyond the technological revolution. And all of that whilst taking two other stakeholders that, frankly, we've forgotten about much more into account. One is Mother Nature. I don't have to tell you that we are part of nature, and taking care of our biodiversity is actually taking care of ourselves, but also the future generations, which have an equal right to enjoy this wonderful planet. And both of them are being challenged. So we're moving, but we're not moving fast enough. And the gap of what we have to address is increasing. On climate change, we have to go down this decade 45%. We're actually projecting still an increase of 14%. Inequality, and especially our attitude towards the emerging markets where 80% of the population live, as we've seen with climate change help or the COVID vaccines, etc., is lacking. So these are big challenges. And they come at a time that geopolitical tension or politics in many countries is not quite working, where the middle class is under pressure, where democracy is being challenged, where trust is lacking. So we have a challenge. We have a challenge. And I think to keep the bigger picture into account, Matt, is most companies would consider themselves responsible businesses. with the current challenges, they're moving to being resilient businesses. But I'm very much advocating that we need to create regenerative businesses, businesses that actually improve the state of the world, not make them less bad. And it requires us to move from this fossil economy I talked about to leveraging this data economy that we're in now, but increasingly moving to what I would call a biodiversity economy, where we live in harmony with Mother Nature and planet Earth for that matter. And that requires us to not only focus on output, what I call an output economy, but increasingly an input, an impact economy from output to impact. So these are some of the challenges, and I think most people are well aware of them. And we have the means in politics and technology and in finance and civil society, if you want to attack these challenges. But in fact, 80-90% can be solved right now with the means that we have available. But what is lacking increasingly so, and coming back to education again, is probably leadership. Many would say that climate change or inequality or deforestation or food insecurity are symptoms of a bigger issue, that bigger issue being a level of greed or apathy or selfishness that is there in society. And as we've seen during COVID, a bifurcation in business models where businesses that were run under the multi-stakeholder longer term, putting purpose at the core of their operations and sustainability as well, where businesses that did significantly better than the ones myopically focused on shareholder primacy, we've actually seen the same with leadership. We've seen that leaders that are more have a higher form of humanity, humility, empathy, compassion, purpose driven, thinking multi generational, embracing these broader partnerships, these leaders are doing better as well. So this is the age of leadership. And here is a challenge because most educational institutions, Hult being an exception to that increasingly, but most educational institutions just focus on the return on financial capital and create, if I may call it, little Milton Friedmans on steroids. If you're lucky, sustainability is an elective that you might or might not take, but the core curriculum doesn't reflect that. So just like companies need to put sustainability in their core curriculum, so do universities need to do that. And I'm glad to see that you've embraced that. But we have to create these broader, cooperative, moral leaders that society needs right now. And that's probably the biggest challenge. I've often said we're short of leaders and trees.
That's a good segue to the next question, Paul. So, as you alluded, we have a role to play, enormous role to play in educating and inspiring the next generation of business leaders to think and to understand how to work and to bring sustainability into the boardroom. But what about our students and graduates themselves? What advice would you give them on staying motivated to make positive change and having a sense of agency in a world where it may feel like they don't have much?
Yeah. Well, I'm still learning myself and developing myself, so I'm not sure that my advice is here is the wisdom. I mean, the wisdom is still being gained by all of us. But uh, I think the first thing I would say to students is whatever you can do or whatever you can dream, do it. Begin it right now. Too many people say, I wish I had done this or I wish I had done that. And frankly, I hate that sentence. So many people that I encounter that are able to make the changes are afraid to speak up or take a risk or do something. And then, frankly, they regret it for the rest of their life. So, my first thing I would say is be bold, be brave, and do the things you believe in. You know, the scarcest commodity you have is time, and other people will try to hijack that commodity from you, but you have to be careful and spend it wisely. The second thing I would say to the students is probably whatever you do, maintain a sense of humility that in itself I believe leads to curiosity, but humility, humanity are the right skills. You know, without that curiosity you will not survive, and keeping a humble sense, you will not build the trust that is needed to work with other people. I always say that leadership ultimately starts at the moment when you realize that by putting yourself to the service of others, you're better off yourselves as well. And that requires that certain sense of humility once more. And then the last thing is follow your own path. What I found my whole life is that many people that try to cast you in their images, but be yourself, be authentic. You know that we are at our best if we find this sweet spot between what the world needs, what we're good at, and frankly what we enjoy doing. And if you can operate at that intersection, I think you're very good. But you know, many people are under pressure to lead a little bit of a different life. I first have to become CEO. I first have to earn a lot of money. I first have to get the big titles. But it's not about that. It's really not about impressing people, but impacting others. And we have to keep that in mind and stay firmly, I would say, grounded in our systems. Then my final slogan in my life has always been, it's better to make the dust than eat the dust. You know, we now need people that not that they are contrarians, but are willing to not only challenge the system but actively work on driving these broader system changes. Obviously, a strong sense of purpose helps. The humility and the curiosity help. But at the end of the day, we need the people that are willing to stick out their necks and put the foot on the pedal, so to speak, and drive these broader changes that society now needs. And what I found in my life is if you take the initiative in many of these things, you're always better off in the end. And hence, better to make the dust than eat the dust.
Paul, what a fabulous way to finish. I've really enjoyed today's conversation, and I really hope that our graduates and our students have found it just as engaging, fascinating, thought-provoking, and inspiring as I did. Paul Polman, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on being Hult International Business School's first honorary doctorate.
No, thanks once more, Matt. I certainly enjoyed it. Good luck to all of the students, and I'll wear the honorary degree with pride. Thank you.
Thank you.